In the ultrasound room, the doctor suddenly fell silent. He stared at the screen, his face turning pale, like he had just seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Then he pulled me into a corner, his voice shaking as he whispered, "Please, divorce your wife. Now." I actually laughed, thinking he had to be joking, until he rewound the ultrasound and pointed to one tiny detail most people would never notice. My hands went ice cold. My heart dropped. The doctor leaned in and said something I still can't forget. "You'll understand when she carries that baby out of this hospital, and you'll hate yourself for not listening to me." From that moment on, I started replaying every strange sign. My wife guarding her pregnancy records like a secret, switching hospitals repeatedly, and refusing to let me take photos because it was bad luck. I secretly met a nurse I knew and discovered the doctor's name on her file had been changed multiple times. Then I noticed something worse. One appointment was scheduled on the exact day she claimed she was visiting her mother. So I hired a private investigator, and what he found made my blood boil. My wife was going in and out of a mysterious apartment with a married man wearing a wedding ring. And inside that apartment, there was already a baby crib, like it had been prepared for months. If you want to know what the doctor saw on that ultrasound and why he begged me to leave her, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next part will shock you to your core. I woke up the way I always did, before the alarm, before the house made noise, before anyone needed anything from me. Coffee, shower, clean shirt. The kind of morning you build when you've spent years learning how to keep life steady, even when it tries to shake you. My phone buzzed with work messages, a few quick updates I could handle in the parking lot later. Nothing urgent. I liked it that way. Order. Routine. Quiet control. She came into the kitchen in slippers, one hand on her belly, the other scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up when she spoke. "We need to leave in 20 minutes. Not, "Good morning." Not, "You ready?" Just instructions. I watched her pour herself juice like I wasn't even there. I'd been married before. I knew what real partnership felt like. This wasn't that. This was me orbiting her plans, her moods, her schedule. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself she was pregnant. Hormones, stress. I'd promised myself I wouldn't become one of those men who argues with a woman carrying his child. That promise started costing me more than I realized. In the car, she adjusted the seat and sighed like I was driving wrong, even though I wasn't saying a word. "And don't start asking questions today, okay? Just be normal. Be normal." Like I was the one making things tense. At the clinic, she checked in fast, like she'd rehearsed it. When the receptionist asked for my name, my wife smiled and cut in. "He doesn't need access to the records. I'll handle everything." I stood there, holding my wallet, looking like a guy who got dragged along to pay the bill. The nurse called her name, then glanced at me like she expected me to follow. My wife turned immediately. "No, he can wait. It's fine. It's the anatomy scan, ma'am. Partners usually..." "He's fine, right?" She looked at me like the question was a test. I nodded because I always nodded. Because making a scene never solved anything. Because I'd spent most of my life swallowing irritation and calling it maturity. I waited in the hallway with a vending machine humming behind me and the smell of disinfectant in my nose. 10 minutes became 20. I checked my phone, then put it away. Something about the silence felt heavy. Then the exam room door opened. The doctor stepped out first, not the nurse. He didn't smile. He didn't even pretend. He scanned the hallway like he needed to make sure we were alone, then walked straight toward me. "Sir, can I speak with you?" My wife's voice shot out from inside the room. "What are you doing? He doesn't need..." The doctor didn't answer her. He kept moving until we were near the corner where the cameras couldn't catch his mouth clearly. He lowered his voice. "Please, divorce your wife." I let out a short laugh, the kind you do when someone crosses a line and you assume they're joking. "Doc, come on. You don't even know us." His eyes didn't change. No drama, just fear, like he'd seen something that didn't belong in a happy family. "Listen to me. I'm not saying this as a joke. I'm saying it because if you don't, you're going to lose more than you think." My throat tightened. "What did you see?" He glanced back at the room, then leaned in closer. "Don't let her leave this hospital with that baby. If she walks out of here with the child before you protect yourself, you will be destroyed." The hallway suddenly felt too narrow. My skin went cold under my shirt. Behind us, I heard the door open again. heard my wife's heels on the floor, quick and sharp, coming straight toward us. And I stayed where I was, staring at the doctor, trying to figure out whether my entire life had just shifted without making a sound. She came at me fast, heels tapping like a warning. "What did he say to you?" Her voice stayed sweet on the outside, but her eyes didn't match it. I'd seen that look before. Not often, usually when she wanted control back in her hands. I kept my face still. "He asked about my insurance information. That's all." She watched me for a second, like she was measuring my pulse without touching my wrist. "Good, because I don't want you talking to anyone without me there." We walked out together, her arm slipping into mine for the first time that day, like she wanted the staff to see us as a normal couple. I didn't pull away. I just held the car keys tighter. On the drive home, she talked about baby furniture and paint colors. I answered with small sounds. My mind stayed on the doctor's words. Not the sentence itself, but the way he said it. Like he'd already watched men like me get crushed by something they never saw coming. At the first red light, I glanced over. Tiana was scrolling on her phone, smiling at something. Not a trace of worry. That calmness almost made it worse. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom and shut the door. I heard the lock click. No explanation, no apology. Just the sound of being kept out. I stood in the hallway for a moment, then walked into the kitchen and opened the folder where we kept paperwork. Most of it was bills, warranties, tax documents. The pregnancy stuff was missing. Of course it was. So I started with what I could access. I pulled up our appointment reminders in the clinic's portal. The last 3 visits were listed under different locations, different providers. That didn't make sense. She told me it was all the same system. It wasn't. Next came the receipts. I found 2 in the trash, torn clean down the middle. The side with the amount was still there. The side with the provider's name and address was gone. That wasn't forgetfulness. That was a habit. My phone rang. Her mother. "Malik, baby, I heard you've been stressed. You need to be gentle with my daughter right now. She's carrying your child." I kept my voice low. "I'm being gentle. She says you've been distant. You're always at work. Don't make her feel alone." After that call, her brother texted me a scripture about husbands honoring their wives. 2 neighbors smiled at Tiana later that afternoon and gave me a look like I was the reason she needed extra support. She had spoken first. That was her talent. She always spoke first. I didn't defend myself. I didn't send long explanations. I just opened my notes app and started writing down dates, times, names. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, an unfamiliar number. "This is Nina Carter. I work at the clinic." I stepped onto the back porch, keeping my voice quiet. "How did you get my number?" "I shouldn't be calling you, but I saw what happened today, and I'm telling you as a woman who's watched a lot of good men get played. Something isn't right." My throat tightened. "What isn't right?" She hesitated, then spoke fast, like she needed to get it out before fear stopped her. "Your wife has had her provider changed multiple times. There are notes on the file, edits. Someone keeps restricting access. That's not normal prenatal care." I said nothing. Let the words settle. Nina continued. "If you want to protect yourself, Malik, you need to start saving everything. Every message, every receipt, every appointment confirmation. Because once she decides you're the enemy, she'll make sure everyone believes it." I stared at the dark screen of my phone after she hung up, then went back inside and opened my laptop again. This time not as a husband trying to understand, but as a man building a record. The next morning, my coffee went cold on the counter while I stared at the clinic portal like it was a puzzle that didn't want to be solved. Nina hadn't given me anything official. She just pointed me toward the place where people usually don't look. Small changes, quiet edits, little choices that only make sense if someone is trying to control the story. I clicked through the billing section. Most of the charges hit our insurance like normal. Then I saw one visit marked as self-pay. That made me sit up. Tiana never paid out of pocket for anything if she didn't have to. She hated wasting money on what we already pay for. But here it was, one appointment paid with a card I didn't recognize, listed under a different contact address. Not my house, not her mother's, somewhere else. I copied the entry into my notes, then printed the page and slid it under a folder on my desk. My hand moved on its own, like training, like muscle memory from years of learning to document things the right way. A few minutes later, I walked into the bedroom to get dressed and saw her phone face down on the nightstand. Normally, she left it anywhere. Now it stayed flipped, like it had something to hide. She reached for it the second she noticed me looking. "Don't touch my phone, Malik." I didn't even step toward it. I wasn't. She turned the screen on and tapped in a new passcode. Her shoulders stayed relaxed, like it was no big deal, like she hadn't just put a lock on something we used to share without thinking. "Why'd you change it?" "Because I can. I need privacy." Privacy. From her husband, while carrying our baby. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I could feel how badly she wanted a reaction. The part of her that craved it, that fed off it. She left the room after that and took her phone with her, like it was a weapon. By lunchtime, the emails from the clinic stopped coming to our shared inbox. A notification popped up on my phone. This account is no longer linked. She had unhooked me from the only thread I still had. When I asked her about it, she didn't even turn around from the sink. "You don't need those. They stress you out." The way she said it, calm, almost caring, made me question myself for a second. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was digging for problems because I'd been through too much already. I'd lost a wife once. I'd buried someone I loved and spent years rebuilding a life that didn't fall apart. Maybe I was scared to trust happiness. That thought lasted about 15 seconds, because when I opened the calendar app we shared, her future appointments were gone. Not rescheduled, not moved, deleted like they never existed. I stared at the empty week, then at the phone in my hand. If someone had erased my schedule at work, I'd call it sabotage. If a stranger did it, I'd call it a threat. But this was my wife, and she was doing it with the same ease she used to choose dinner plans. I didn't argue, I didn't accuse, I just started moving differently. That afternoon, I drove to the bank and set up transaction alerts for every account tied to my name. Not just big transfers, everything. If $1 left without me knowing, my phone would buzz. On the way out, I stopped at a print shop and made copies of every medical bill I could find, every piece of mail that showed up with her name on it. I took photos of appointment confirmations that still existed in the system, screenshots, timestamps, file names. Everything got backed up to a private folder she didn't know about. That night, she climbed into bed without a word, turned her back to me, and scrolled until the light from her phone hit the ceiling. I lay there listening to her breathe, thinking about that self-pay appointment and the address I'd never seen before, and I kept my eyes open while my thumb typed it into a map search, waiting to see what it belonged to. The address on my screen turned out to be a mailbox store, one of those places people use when they don't want their real location tied to anything. I stared at it for a long minute, then closed the app when Tiana rolled over. She didn't ask what I was doing. She didn't need to. She already knew she'd moved faster than me. The next day, she invited me to a small family lunch at her aunt's house. She called it something normal. Her tone made it sound like I'd been the one acting strange. I went anyway. That's what I did. I showed up. I kept things calm. I tried to be decent, even when I didn't feel decent. Her relatives were already there when we walked in. Smiles, hugs, plates of food being passed around. The kind of gathering where everyone talks loud and nobody listens too closely. Tiana stayed close to me the first few minutes, hand on my arm, voice sweet. Then she drifted toward the living room where the women were sitting. I followed with a glass of water, standing off to the side. I didn't have much appetite. Someone asked how she was feeling. Another asked if I'd been taking care of her. Tiana laughed softly and waved her hand. "Oh, he's trying." That one word landed wrong. Then she turned toward me, eyes bright, smile still in place. "Tell them, Malik. Tell them you're excited." I nodded once. "I'm excited." She let out a sigh like she'd been carrying a heavy burden. "See, he says the right things. But when it's time to show up, it's always work, work, work." A few heads turned. A few brows tightened. I kept my face still. One of her cousins leaned forward. "You been missing appointments?" Tiana didn't answer directly. She stared at her hands and blinked fast, like she was holding back tears. "It's not that. I feel alone sometimes." And there it was. The shift. Everyone in that room moved emotionally toward her without even realizing it. It was like watching gravity work. I didn't defend myself. Arguing with a pregnant woman in front of her family would have been a gift to her. A perfect scene, a perfect story. So I stayed quiet. Her aunt reached over and squeezed her hand. "Baby, you don't deserve that. Men need to step up." Tiana wiped the corner of her eye with one finger, careful not to smudge her makeup. "He doesn't even want the baby's last name on the hospital paperwork. He told me not to list him." The lie hit so clean and sharp my stomach tightened. I looked at her, really looked. She didn't flinch. She just sat there, letting the room turn against me, letting them build a version of me that didn't exist. When it was time to leave, her brother walked me to the door. "Man to man, you better do right by her." I nodded. Of course. The whole drive home, Tiana hummed along to the radio like she'd just won something. I didn't speak. The alert came through about 10 minutes after we pulled into the driveway. A transfer, a large one, from our joint savings account. I opened the banking app with shaking fingers, then forced my hand to stop. Forced myself to breathe slow, to read carefully. The money wasn't spent. It had been moved. The destination account number wasn't familiar. I walked inside, went straight to the desk where our house paperwork sat, and flipped through the file. A notice from the county was tucked behind a mortgage statement. Something about a property record update, a filing, a change request. My eyes stayed on the words while my mind did the math. She'd been telling her family I wasn't stepping up, while she quietly stepped into my finances. I set the papers down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the county website to search the filing history under our address. The county site loaded slow, like it was trying to give me time to change my mind. The filing was real. A request to update ownership records. Not approved yet, but submitted. Someone had paid the processing fee. Someone had uploaded documents. My wife had moved money and started paperwork on my house while smiling in a room full of her relatives, letting them think I was the problem. I saved the page as a PDF, emailed it to myself, then logged out and cleared the browser history on instinct. Not because I thought she'd check, but because I didn't want to underestimate her anymore. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then the message came through. "You think she's going to her mom's?" Below it was an address, a unit number, a time, tomorrow, 2:15 p.m. No name, no explanation, just that. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Part of me wanted to delete it and pretend I never saw it. A bigger part of me wanted to drive there right now and break something. Not them, not the house, just something. Anything that would release the pressure building in my chest. Instead, I saved the message, took a screenshot, put it in the same folder as the bank alert and the county filing. The next day, I told Tiana I had an early meeting. She kissed my cheek like she always did when she was performing wife in public. "Don't work too hard." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. At 1:50, I parked across the street from the address and the message. I kept the engine off and the seat back slightly reclined, not trying to hide like a teenager, just trying not to be seen. At 2:12, she showed up. Tiana stepped out of her car, wearing a loose sweater, hair pulled back, one hand on her belly like she wanted anyone watching to see her as fragile. She checked her phone, glanced around, then walked toward the building. A man met her at the entrance. He wasn't young, mid-40s maybe, clean shoes, button-down shirt, wedding ring on his left hand. Tiana didn't hesitate. She leaned in close, like she belonged there. He opened the door for her. His hand touched the small of her back. They disappeared inside. I waited a full minute before moving, not rushing, not making noise, just watching my own hands as I stepped out of the car and crossed the street like I was going to a normal appointment. The lobby had a directory and a package room. I kept my head down, walked past like I lived there, then took the stairs instead of the elevator. 3rd floor. The unit number matched the message. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. Their voices carried through the door in soft bursts, then laughter. Familiar laughter. The kind she never gave me anymore. I stepped closer, then stopped when I saw the door wasn't fully latched. Just slightly open, like someone had been careless. I pushed it with 2 fingers. The living room was neat, too neat. No personal clutter, no pictures, no mess. Like a staged space. And there, near the window, sat a baby crib. Not folded up, not in a box, assembled, with a fitted sheet. A little blanket folded at the foot like it had been prepared by someone who couldn't wait. A diaper bag rested beside it. A stack of newborn onesies sat on a chair. On the wall, taped up with blue painter's tape, was a handwritten schedule. Doctor appointments, vitamins, feeding times. My stomach turned as if my body understood before my mind finished catching up. From deeper inside the apartment, I heard Tiana's voice again, soft, familiar, intimate. "We're almost there." I backed away from the doorway without making a sound, walked down the stairs like my legs belonged to someone else, and sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel, trying to decide who I needed to call first, my lawyer or Nina. I didn't go home right away. The car stayed parked 2 streets over from my own driveway, while I stared at my contact list, thumb hovering over names like they were loaded weapons. Calling Tiana would have done nothing. Confronting her would have done worse. She'd cry, twist it, and by the time I finished one sentence, she'd already be planning how to use my tone against me. So I called a lawyer, not a friend of a friend, not someone who does paperwork. I picked a family law attorney with real courtroom experience, the kind who has seen couples turn into enemies and knows how people set traps. Her name was Denise Holloway. Her office receptionist told me she could squeeze me in at the end of the day. I sat in the waiting room with my hands folded, acting like I was there for a routine appointment. The truth was my heart was punching against my ribs like it wanted out. Denise called me into her office, offered water, then looked me straight in the eye. "Tell me what's happening." No speeches, just facts. So I gave her facts. Ultrasound day, the doctor's warning, the blocked access, the money transfer, the county filing, the apartment, the crib, the man with the wedding ring. Denise didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She just took notes, calm and sharp. "You need to assume she's building a case against you, Malik." I felt my jaw tighten. Against me? For what? For control, for leverage. Most of the time it's money and property. Sometimes it's custody. Sometimes it's both. And one of the fastest ways to remove a husband from a home is a domestic violence allegation. I leaned back slowly. "I've never touched her." "You don't have to. If she calls 911, cries on cue, and says she's afraid, you'll be gone for at least a night, maybe longer. And once you're out, she'll try to make it permanent." I stared at the wall behind her, letting that land. Denise tapped her pen. "Here's what you do. You stop reacting. You stop arguing. You document everything. You keep receipts, screenshots, dates. You don't raise your voice. You don't drink around her. You don't get alone with her without a record of where you were and what happened. You're going to move like you're already being watched." I nodded once. That part came naturally. Discipline, containment. I'd lived that way before. On the way out, she handed me a list, a secure cloud folder, a notebook for handwritten notes, a separate bank account in my name only, instructions on how to request copies of filings and how to preserve electronic evidence. And Malik, don't tell her you hired me. Back in my car, I organized my proof like I was building a timeline for a judge, not a story for myself. Medical portal screenshots, bank transfer alert, county filing PDF, photo of the apartment building directory, the anonymous text message with the address, the map search of the mailbox store. Then I started saving her messages too, the ones I used to delete because they were just words. "Don't embarrass me. You always make everything about you. If you loved me, you'd let me handle this." Those weren't arguments, they were patterns. That night, a sedan I didn't recognize sat across the street from my house longer than it should have. No lights, no one getting out, just parked. I watched from behind the curtains without moving them. A few minutes later, another message hit my phone. "Stay out of her business." No number attached, no way to reply. I saved it anyway, then walked into the kitchen where Tiana was stirring something on the stove, humming softly like life was normal. She glanced over her shoulder. "You're late. Work ran long." You've been acting weird lately." I washed my hands at the sink, slow and quiet, then picked up a dish towel and dried them like I hadn't just seen a crib in another man's apartment. "You want me to set the table?" Tiana looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly, like she couldn't decide what version of me she was dealing with. "I already did." I nodded, pulled out a chair, and sat down while my phone buzzed again inside my pocket, waiting for me to check it. The phone buzzed again while I sat at the table. I didn't check it right away. I kept my eyes on my plate, forced myself to chew, nodded when Tiana spoke like we were a normal couple talking about a normal baby. After dinner, she asked me to take out the trash and wipe down the counters. You always leave crumbs. I grabbed the bag, tied it off, then carried it outside. The air was cool. The street stayed quiet. That sedan from earlier wasn't there anymore, but I didn't relax. I didn't give myself that luxury. When I came back in, Tiana was standing in the hallway with her arms crossed. "We need to talk." I kept my voice even. "Okay? You've been hiding things from me." That almost made me smile, not because it was funny, but because it was pure projection. She said it like she was wounded, like she was the one being betrayed. I shrugged. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, eyes locked on mine. "I know you're doing something. I can feel it." I stayed calm. "Pregnancy makes everything feel bigger. You're stressed." Her expression shifted. The softness dropped. "Don't talk to me like I'm crazy." I didn't. "Yes, you did." I took a slow breath. Denise's voice ran through my head. "Don't argue. Don't react. Don't give her the moment." So I turned toward the kitchen. "I'm going to bed." Tiana followed, loud now. "You think you can just walk away? That's what you do, Malik. You run and then act like you're the good guy." I stopped at the edge of the living room and faced her again. "Lower your voice." "Or what?" She said it like a dare. I didn't answer. I didn't step toward her. I didn't even raise my hands. I just stood there, letting her show me who she was when she wasn't getting what she wanted. Then she did something small that changed everything. She grabbed a decorative glass bowl off the side table and slammed it onto the floor. It shattered, loud, sharp. Pieces scattered across the hardwood. Tiana gasped like she'd been attacked. Her hand flew to her belly, her mouth opened, shaking. "Oh my God. Malik." I froze. "What are you doing?" Her eyes went wide. She backed up 2 steps like I'd moved toward her. "Get away from me." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm not near you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her thumb moved fast. "You're scaring me." "Tiana, stop." She hit the screen and put it to her ear, then turned slightly so I could hear the performance. "Hi, yes, I need help. My husband is threatening me. I'm pregnant. He's out of control." I didn't move. My hands stayed at my sides. My voice stayed low. "Tell them the truth." She didn't even glance at me. "He threw something. I'm afraid he's going to hit me." My stomach dropped. I watched her do it. I watched her set the stage. Then she did the part that told me she'd rehearsed the ending. She reached under her sweater and pressed her fingers against her upper arm, hard. Once, twice, like she was trying to bruise herself. Then she winced and turned her body so I couldn't see the spot anymore. Sirens didn't take long. 2 patrol cars pulled up. Neighbors' porch lights clicked on like a chain reaction. Curtains shifted. People came outside in pajamas and hoodies, hungry for a story. Tiana opened the door with tears ready, voice trembling. "Thank God you're here." An officer stepped in, hand resting near his belt. "Sir, can you come outside?" I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I walked out slowly, palms visible, like I'd been trained to do. On the porch, one officer spoke quietly. "Is there a firearm in the house?" "Yes, locked, safe." "We're going to need you to step down the stairs." I did. Tiana stood behind them, wrapped in a blanket someone had handed her, eyes glossy, playing fragile. She lifted her sleeve just enough for the officers to see a red mark on her arm. It wasn't even a bruise yet, but she acted like it was proof. A neighbor whispered to another. I knew something was off with him. That sentence hit harder than the cuffs. The officer looked at me like he already had his conclusion. "Sir, we're going to take you in for the night while we sort this out." I didn't fight it. Fighting would have made me exactly what she said I was. In the back of the patrol car, I stared at my own hands and tried to swallow the humiliation sitting in my throat. The old wound opened up. The feeling of being misjudged, reduced, labeled dangerous, no matter how careful I'd been. At the station, they took my belt, my shoelaces, my dignity. A younger officer asked questions like he didn't expect honest answers. "Have you ever hit her before?" "No." "Have you ever threatened her?" "No." He wrote something down anyway. Hours later, when they finally let me out, the sky was still dark. My phone was returned to me with a plastic bag and a signature line. I walked outside, stood in the cold, and didn't call Tiana. Instead, I opened my email, attached every document in my folder, and sent it to Denise Holloway with one line in the subject. Tonight was the setup. Then I called an Uber, watched the taillights disappear, and checked the time on my screen as the driver pulled up, already thinking about what Tiana was doing inside my house while I wasn't there. The Uber dropped me a block away from my own place. Denise told me not to go back that night. Not without a witness, not without a plan. So I checked into a motel off the highway, the kind with thin towels and a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. Sleep didn't come. My mind kept replaying Tiana's voice on the phone, the way she said, "out of control," like she'd been waiting years to use it. By morning, Denise had already filed paperwork for an emergency hearing and sent a formal request to preserve any body cam footage from the arrest. She also told me to stop texting my wife. Every message could be used against me. "Let her talk to herself, Malik," she said. "She'll show her hand." I stayed in my work clothes all day, moving through meetings like my body was present and my spirit was elsewhere. People asked if I was tired. I said yes. That was the safest answer. That evening, Nina called again. "Are you alone?" "Yeah." "Good, because I'm taking a risk." Her voice sounded tight, like she'd looked over her shoulder before dialing. "I can't print anything from the system without logging it, but I can show you, if you meet me after my shift." We met in a grocery store parking lot, 2 rows over from the entrance, under the kind of streetlight that made everyone look older. Nina sat in her car with a laptop open on her lap. She didn't invite me in. She just turned the screen toward me through the window. "Look," I leaned in. The clinic system showed an audit trail. Every time someone edited a file, it left a mark. Date, time, user ID. I didn't understand all the codes, but I understood the pattern. Tiana's file had been touched too many times. Access restrictions added, removed, added again. Provider changes in quick succession. Notes overwritten. Then Nina clicked into one entry and pointed. This line, "Spouse must not be given information." That wasn't written by a doctor. It was entered after a phone call. Who called? Nina swallowed. The number on file, her number. She requested it, and it's flagged. Not illegal, just unusual. They don't do that unless the patient insists. My stomach turned. Nina clicked again and opened another note. Patient requests that husband not be present. Patient fears conflict. Nina looked up at me. I've seen this before. When someone's preparing to say you're dangerous. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Nina closed the laptop. "I shouldn't have shown you that, but you deserve to know what she's building." I nodded slowly. "Thank you. Be careful, Malik. She's not scared of you. She's using fear." Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed and made another call. This one wasn't to Denise. It was to an independent lab. They offered a legal paternity test after birth, but they also explained something else. There were ways to establish paternity quickly once the baby arrived, and if I waited too long, I might lose the chance to control how the results were handled. I scheduled everything I could. I also paid for a consultation on how to secure chain of custody, because I wasn't walking into this blind. The next morning, I checked my phone and saw missed calls from Tiana. Voicemails, texts. I didn't open them. Denise had warned me. Reading the words wouldn't help. Replying would hurt. Still, curiosity got the better of me for 1 second. I listened to one voicemail. Tiana's voice came through soft and shaky. "Malik, I didn't want it to go like this. You made me scared. You did. I'm trying to protect the baby. Please, just stop fighting me." Her tone sounded like a woman in pain. Anyone else would have believed her. But I'd heard her on the other side of that door at the apartment saying, "We're almost there." I knew what almost there meant now. She wanted the story locked in place before the baby arrived. She wanted the world to see her as the victim and me as the threat. Once that happened, she could move money, change paperwork, claim custody, and no one would question it because I'd already been removed once by police. I opened my laptop, labeled a new folder with today's date, and dragged Nina's notes into my timeline, along with the police incident number and Denise's filing confirmation, then sat there in the motel chair, waiting for the next move to come from her. The call came at 4:06 a.m., not from Tiana, from her mother. "Malik, she's in labor. They're taking her in." Her voice sounded like a command, not a notification. Like I was supposed to show up and play my part, the way I always had. What hospital? A pause. Then, the one near the interstate. Hurry. The line went dead. Denise had already prepared me for this. She'd told me the minute labor started, I needed to be present and calm, and I needed to do everything through proper channels. No arguing in the lobby, no bargaining with nurses, no yelling at my wife. So I drove there, parked, and walked in with a folder under my arm like I belonged in any room I entered. At the desk, I spoke softly. I'm Malik Johnson. I'm the husband. I'm here for my child's delivery. I have documentation if you need it. The receptionist glanced at the screen, then at me. The patient requested no visitors. I nodded. I understand. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to be present for my child. Can you call the charge nurse and the attending physician? My attorney advised me to request a case manager if there's a dispute. That sentence changed the temperature. People don't expect calm men to say, case manager. They expect anger, pleading, drama. I gave none of it. A nurse came out, a tall woman with tired eyes and a clipboard. Mr. Johnson? Yes, ma'am. Follow me. She didn't smile. She didn't frown either. Just walked like she'd handled situations like this before. Outside the delivery room, she stopped. Your wife is very upset. She says she's afraid of you. I kept my hands visible. I haven't touched her. There was an incident where she called police during an argument. It's documented. I'm only asking to be in the building and to have lawful access to information about my child. The nurse studied my face for a moment, then nodded once. You can wait here. Do not approach her unless staff tells you. If you raise your voice, you're out. Understood. I sat in a chair against the wall and watched the doors swing open and shut as nurses moved in and out. A few hours passed. My phone buzzed with updates from Denise. Short instructions, nothing emotional. Stay calm. Do not engage. Ask for the birth certificate paperwork to be handled by hospital administration, not family. Around noon, I heard Tiana's voice through the door. No, I can't. Yes, you can, baby. Another push. Then another voice cut through. A man's voice. Low. Close. You're doing good. I'm right here. I stood up slowly. That wasn't a doctor, not a nurse. The door cracked open a few minutes later and I saw him. Same man, same wedding ring, standing inside the room like he had every right to be there. His hand rested on the bed rail. His body leaned toward my wife. Too familiar, too practiced. Tiana turned her head and spoke to him in a tone I hadn't heard from her in months. Don't leave me. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The nurse at the doorway blocked my line of sight. Sir, stay back. I didn't step forward. I didn't swing. I didn't even speak to him. Instead, I looked at the nurse. That man, who is he listed as? She hesitated. I don't know. Then please find out. Tiana saw me then. Her eyes widened for half a second. Just a flicker. She hadn't expected me to be standing there. Not calm, not prepared, not present. She shifted fast, voice rising. Why is he here? Get him out. He's harassing me. Her mother appeared in the hall like she'd been waiting. Malik, don't do this today. Let her have peace. I nodded once. I'm not doing anything. I'm standing where staff told me to stand. Tiana's breathing sped up. Her face crumpled. Tears came on cue. He's going to hurt me. He always makes me feel unsafe. The man with the ring stepped forward, putting himself between us like a protector, like a hero. That was the play. Trigger me. Make me lunge. Get it on camera. Finish the story. I reached into my folder instead. Denise had told me to keep a printed copy of everything, because printed paper doesn't disappear the way digital accounts do when someone changes passwords. I handed the nurse a packet. These are the audit notes from the clinic showing restricted access entered after a phone request. These are the banking transfer alerts and the property filing confirmation. This is the address connected to a self-pay appointment that does not match our residence, and this is the message I received with that address. I'm requesting a social worker and hospital administration because there's a custody and safety issue involving my child. The nurse's eyes moved over the first page, then the second. Her expression changed, not to sympathy but to caution. She looked back at Tiana, then at the man with the ring. Ma'am, who is this gentleman? Tiana opened her mouth, then closed it. The tears didn't stop, but the words didn't come out right away. Her mother tried to jump in. "He's family." The nurse didn't accept it. "I need a name and a relationship." Tiana's voice cracked. He's a friend." The man with the ring shifted, uncomfortable for the first time. I watched all of it without blinking. Then Tiana reached for her phone with shaking hands, lifting it like she was going to record me. She angled it toward my face, waiting for me to lose control. I didn't give her that. I just leaned slightly toward the nurse and spoke quietly. "You can check with security. There's a prior call involving a false report. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make sure my child doesn't leave this hospital under false paperwork." The nurse nodded once, turned, and walked into the room with my packet still in her hand, while Tiana stared at me from the bed like she'd just realized her tears weren't enough to erase evidence. The hospital brought in a social worker before the baby even cried. A woman with a badge and a calm voice sat with me in a small room and asked questions that weren't about feelings. She wanted dates, names, documents. She wanted facts that could be verified. I gave her everything. The police report number from the night I was taken in, the county filing, the bank transfer, the clinic audit trail Nina showed me, the anonymous messages, the apartment address. She didn't react the way family reacts. No gasps, no pity, just a pen moving across paper. Later, Denise arrived with her own folder, dressed like she'd walked out of a courtroom because she probably had. She didn't greet Tiana. She didn't argue with her mother. She spoke to hospital administration and security like this was a problem they needed to contain before it became a lawsuit. By the end of the day, the man with the wedding ring was escorted out and told not to return. Tiana screamed that I was ruining her life. The nurses didn't flinch. They'd heard that line in other versions from other people. When my son was born, I didn't ask for anyone's permission to breathe. I stood where they told me to stand, signed what Denise told me to sign, and requested a certified copy of every form submitted about my child. No one could misplace paperwork when the hospital knew attorneys were involved. 2 days later, the paternity test was initiated through the lab Denise recommended, with chain of custody documented. The results came back fast. He was mine. That should have brought relief. Instead, it clarified the real point of the plan. Tiana hadn't been trying to hand my child to another man. She'd been trying to use another man to break me, label me dangerous, and take everything that came with my name. Once the legal process started, her story kept shifting. At first I was abusive, then I was emotionally distant, then I was cheating, then I was unstable. Every version changed depending on what she needed that day. Denise didn't care about versions. She cared about evidence. She filed for an emergency temporary custody order based on the false police call, the repeated attempts to block medical access, and financial fraud indicators. She requested the court order to freeze certain accounts pending review. She demanded discovery on every property filing and every transfer. The judge didn't raise his voice either. He just asked questions and looked at the paperwork. Tiana cried. Her mother cried. Her brother spoke about family and forgiveness. Denise handed the judge the audit log and the filing receipts. The room got quiet. The temporary orders were issued the same day. I was granted primary physical custody pending further hearings, and Tiana was ordered to leave the marital residence. She was also prohibited from accessing my accounts outside normal household expenses, and the court ordered her to produce every financial statement tied to her name. She walked out of that courtroom with her face twisted in rage, not sadness. That look told me she never loved me the way I thought she did. She loved the access. An investigation followed. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. The property office reviewed the forged submission. The bank flagged the transfer. The district attorney's office requested records. The false report to police got reopened when body cam footage showed I never moved toward her, never raised a hand, never even stepped past the living room rug. Her friend with the ring was questioned too. He tried to act like he barely knew her, until Denise subpoenaed his text history and the lease records tied to that apartment. They didn't haul her away in handcuffs on the spot. Life doesn't work like that. But she lost what mattered to her. She lost access to my home. She lost control over my money. She lost the power to decide whether I got to be a father. The people who once nodded along with her started asking quiet questions. Some stopped calling her. Some stopped inviting her, and I didn't chase anyone to explain myself. The last time I saw Tiana in person was at a final hearing months later. She stood across the room, no longer pregnant, no longer protected by the image of vulnerability. Her eyes scanned me like she was searching for a crack, something to pull on. I didn't give her one. Denise spoke. The judge ruled. The paperwork was stamped. My signature went on the line that ended my marriage and secured my son's future under a trust arrangement she couldn't touch. Outside the courthouse, I held my son in his carrier and walked to my car alone. No family speech, no victory lap, just a man leaving with what was his. At a red light, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. I deleted it, buckled my son's strap tighter, and drove forward with both hands on the wheel, thinking about dinner, daycare schedules, and the quiet kind of peace that doesn't need witnesses.